So I'm here on vacation on my beautiful island of Puerto Rico, and I've just found my ways to the keys of a 2022 Toyota 4Runner. Welcome to the Calentón. The 4Runner was introduced in 1984 as one of Toyota's first SUVs, and ever since then the formula has pretty much been the same: a V6 engine, a body-on-frame construction, and a rear window that goes down. Looks-wise, the 4Runner really hasn't changed much throughout the years. It still has this very classic SUV shape, and this one, this army green color, is really easy on the eyes. It also has a new front and rear bumper and these very nice 17-inch wheels wrapped in 265/70/17 tires. Moving on to the interior and features of the 4Runner, the first thing I can tell you is that it finally gets a push-button start with a smart key system, which means you can pretty much operate the whole vehicle without ever taking the key out of your pocket. You also get a new 8-inch display in the middle that has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all the standard Toyota features, and finally a real backup camera. You also get an 8-way adjustable driver's seat and seating for 5 people. And in the trunk, you have room for a couple of dead bodies.
In typical Toyota fashion, the interior is mostly plastic, but in this case, that is not a negative. It seems very well put together, very solid and durable, just like the rest of the 4Runner. If you have shorter arms, this is gonna be a good one for you. The 4Runner has this very cool slide out tray that allows you to reach items that are deep inside the trunk.
So, driving the 4Runner. First thing I can tell you is that if you like old school SUVs, this is one you're gonna love. It has that good old school SUV handling. The ride is a little bit bumpy and it kind of floats over stuff, kind of like has a bit of a boaty ride, which is not bad, but it's also a little bit disorienting if you're kind of used to the ride that modern SUVs provides, which is very car-like. This is not like that at all. The other thing I can tell you is that the interior is a little bit noisy. We're going here down the freeway about 50 miles an hour and the road noise is pretty notable, especially from the tires. Even though this one doesn't have big off-road tires, you can still hear a lot of what's happening underneath you, which gives it, again, a very truck-like ride. Now that is not bad per se, but if you're used to modern SUVs and you prefer to have an SUV that rides more like a car, then this might not be the SUV for you. The other thing is the engine. Toyota's been using this engine for pretty much the last 20 years. And while it is a very good engine, it's never going to leave you stranded. It is a 4-liter V6 that pretty much has the power of a 4-cylinder, but also the fuel consumption of a V8. This thing gives me like 17-ish miles per gallon, which by modern standards is not good at all. But it only gives me 270 horsepower. And considering that this is a fairly heavy SUV, that's not a lot. It's also not as smooth as a V8 since it's missing 2 cylinders. But the party trick is that this thing will probably go for 500,000 miles without ever needing a rebuild, which is valuable within itself. I've been trying to come up with a metaphor to describe how the 4Runner drives, and best thing I could come up with is that it's a little bit like watching Nikola Jokic play basketball. If you don't watch the NBA, he's the center for the Denver Nuggets and a really good basketball player. But he looks so uncomfortable running up and down the court. A lot of people make fun of him. But you can rely on him to give you 30 points a night easily for a long while since he seems to never get injured. And that's kind of how this thing is. It kind of feels like you're driving a car that seems uncomfortable with being driven, but it'll get you from anywhere to anywhere with not so much as a hassle. Sure, it doesn't give you the best fuel economy, but the engine won't stop churning away, and even though the ride is not the best and you can feel it boat around everything, it doesn't really beat you up, which is nice. Another complaint I kind of have is that along with the old school SUV feel of this thing, the steering kind of has a pretty big dead spot in the center, which it is kind of disconcerting at first because you have to kind of turn the steering wheel a little bit more than you want to keep it straight in the lane, but it's not a big deal at all. I've been dealing with it, and honestly, even though it is a little bit annoying to get used to, it's not a bad thing at all.
So, on pavement, the 4Runner isn't much to write home about. Off-road, however, it's a different animal. The boaty ride becomes a comfortable sway over bumps. The dead spot in the steering means you can go over rocks and not have to have your arms amputated. And the deeper you go into the wilderness, one really starts to appreciate the fact that no matter where you go, the 4Runner will get you back home. And it can also do this. The 4Runner is quite a bit of fun off-road, and on the road it is a very nice vehicle to get around when you're on vacation. There is, however, a bit of a problem. The 4Runner is quite a bit of an old soul in a new body. You see, it's been in production for about 20 years in its current form, and it's really starting to show its age. I think Toyota should be working